screen share.
Satish?
No, it is not.
Ah,
Yeah,
Paniyat,
yeah, it has come. Just give me a second.
Yeah, while you do it, I'll just
Yeah, please.
we'll start by saying first of all, good evening again. The first session we kind of left in a hurry because we did not have enough time to cover all aspects of the law. If we divide the trademark practice into two, and there are two kinds of practitioners, one who practice before the trademark registry. The other kind of practice is before a litigation, which is before the courts, mostly high courts. The first session, if you remember, we covered the practice before the trademarks registry, predominantly. What is a trademark? The basics, the fundamentals of a trademark. What kind of a trademark you should, how do you choose a trademark? Once you choose a trademark, what you do, how to conduct a search. Then once you search, how do you apply? What is the procedure? Generally, how to procure the registration of a trademark has been covered by the first session. Even though we did go over the remedies, but we did it in a kind of a, and we had to rush it because of paucity of time. So we thought we'll just give a completion to the session by taking you through the remedies available or the benefits of registration of a trademark. The consequence of registration, what happens when somebody infringes your trademark. So basically this session, we will cover the remedies of a trademark. And that is basically the premise of this session. So just to recap what happened, just to give you the basic fundamentals again in a nutshell, we discussed about three kinds of trademarks. You remember we spoke about distinctive trademarks, descriptive trademarks, and generic trademarks. So the basic premise of a trademark, please remember, I think I'll just remind you all that three things. One, the distinctivity of a trademark. Two, the similarity of the trademarks and the similarity of the goods. So please remember these three things because this will come into play in the entire session. Now talking about remedies, the first thing that comes is section 27. Satish.
Yeah, in fact, section 27, if you see, section 27 has to be read with section 134 of the Trademarks Act and 135 of the Trademarks Act, where, like we said last session also, it consists of both registered as well as unregistered trademarks. So necessarily the Act is for both unregistered trademarks as well as for registered trademarks in terms of the protection that a trademark will get. So that is why under section 27 it is very clear. It says no action is permitted for marks that are not registered, but it also says that the action for passing off is left open to the people. Now if you see section 134, 134 very clearly says, here it does not make a distinction with regard to registered or unregistered trademarks. But if you see section 134 1C, where it specifically again says, passing of actions can be instituted also under a district court. So whatever actions that you can take under the Trademarks Act will include both registered trademarks as well as unregistered trademarks. That is what 134 says. And if you see 135, section 135, which...
Satish, your voice is breaking.
I'm sorry. Is it okay now?
Voice is breaking. Now it is okay.
okay.
You can repeat 134.
Yeah,
Oh,
134
repeat 134. Go back.
is actually a departure from the usual civil procedure code rules. The civil procedure code under section 15 specifically says that the plaintiff should approach the lowest court possible. But here the law has made a departure in the sense that the lowest court that you can approach either for an infringement action of a registered trademark or a passing of action in respect of an unregistered trademark, whereas where the district court will be the court of first instance. So that is also something which is made clear in section 134. And 135, which talks about relief, also says.
Satish, let me.
Yeah, please.
Satish, 1 second. Go back to 134, but let us also clarify on the distinction between A and B when it comes to the district court jurisdiction of the district court from C. 134.2, which we don't have it here, but just let's have a reference to 134.2, where it says, as far as infringement of a registered trademark or action relating to any right in a registered trademark can be had in a district court where the plaintiff carries on work. Unlike, there's a departure from 20 CPC. It's an additional right, additional jurisdiction given where it's an exemption to the general rule under section 20 CPC, where you have to seek the defendant. When it comes to infringement of a registered trademark or any right related, any right in a registered trademark, you can approach a district court where the plaintiff resides or carries on business permanently or voluntarily. Unlike, but when it comes to C, passing off, you will, if it is passing off per se, you will have to seek the defendant. But when it comes to infringement and passing off, of course, if the jurisdiction is outside, when the cause of action is outside the jurisdiction, probably you will have to, in Madras High Court, you apply for a leave. You seek court's leave to file in one place. But generally, there is a distinction made where A and B, registered trademark, you can approach the district court within whose jurisdiction the plaintiff resides or carries on business, which is a departure from the general rule under 20 CPC. Satish, continue.
Yeah. In fact, to sum it up, under 134 of the Trademarks Act, you have to approach only the district court. You cannot go and file a suit anywhere less than a district court. In fact, if the words are, if you read these words, it says, shall be no suit shall be instituted in any court inferior to a district court. So it's in fact a negative provision where it says it prohibits you to file any civil suit relating to infringement of trademark or passing off in any court less than a district court. In fact, if it is so done, it can be, the plaint can be rejected under Order 710, 711, where there is no cause of action or barred by law. So we will have to look at it from that perspective. And as far as
when
relief,
it comes to
yes.
Yeah, also add that when it comes to the city of Chennai, Madras High Court original site is a district court, and therefore you will find most of the trademark infringement suits being filed before the now commercial division of the High Court. I just want to add.
That is because CPC's definition of a district court specifically says includes the ordinary original civil jurisdiction of a High Court. So that is the reason why it is being filed only in the High Court of Madras as far as trademark cases are concerned. And coming back to 135, the heading itself is very clear. Here again, there is no distinction made with regard to registered or unregistered trademarks. It says relief in suits for infringement or for passing off. So whichever is the suit that you are filing, you will necessarily claim only the reliefs which are enumerated in section 135 of the Trademarks Act, and that is what it is.
So basically,
here I would like to just include one additional.
Yeah, you are correct.
Yeah. Here I would like to add the highlighted portions which were there in the previous slide. I would like to stress on only one thing here, where injunction is there, damages or accounts of profit is there. It is either or. You cannot
That's
ask
right.
for both. That is statutorily very clear. So you can ask for either accounts of profit or for damages. So, and delivery of goods. So these are the three basic remedies that are available to you. And as far as the second remedy is concerned, you'll have to choose between them.
And academically speaking, you can make the choice of whether you want damages or you want an account of profits at the time of trial. So when you file the suit, you can actually file it for both. There are judgments to that effect also.
You
So
can.
you can please remember that also.
Then you'll have to elect. Then you'll have to elect as to which you are actually going to.
At a later point. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, fair. Rajesh sir.
Yeah, so I just want to sum up. So when it comes to relief in an infringement, action, for a registered trademark, you ask for an infringement of a trademark, you ask a court against passing off, and then damages or accounts of profits, delivery of goods of destruction. These are the relief, just to sum it up. Infringement, passing off, damages or accounts, delivery of goods for destruction or erasure. Why delivery is essential? Because when you do not want the infringing goods to continue to exist, and therefore you are asking the court to order delivery of the goods to be destroyed so that it is not available in the market ever.
Exactly.
Here also there is one very clear-cut demarcation given by the statute which says that it is not the goods which needs to be delivered, it is the infringing labels which needs to be delivered. Or if the goods themselves have the trademarks in it, it has to be delivered.
Yeah, if you can remove the labels, if it is packed in a label, if you can remove the label and just use the goods, yeah, you will be allowed to use it.
Yeah.
So, but the concept of this, Satish, this is your favorite case. Why don't you?
In fact, just see the
1842.
See, that's what I was about to say. The year we are almost 200 years away from that judgment. Yet the principle of law relating to infringement or relating to trademarks per se has not changed at all. Please see the highlighted portion there. It says a person cannot be allowed to use names, etc. And that is what is very crucial, because we keep evolving with whatever indicia that I can create this confusion. Names, etc., by which he may induce purchasers to believe that the goods which he is selling are the manufacture of another person. The law just remains the same. In fact, this judgment, and there are a couple of judgments which follows this, which actually has another phrase called "no man is allowed to sell the goods of another as his own." No man is allowed to sell the goods of another person, of his goods as that of another person's. So these two phrases are probably the most often repeated in trademark law, and close to 200 years now. And it is the principle therefore remains the same. The truth does not change by time. So that is the truth of infringement or passing of actions with regard to trademarks. So the bottom line is that, yes, sir.
No, I just want to add an interesting, these judgments of 1842 and probably early 1900s, when we read that, I think for all those people interested in getting to know the historical background of how this law evolved, those judgments, which we have a couple of judgments in the presentation coming up, so beautifully analyzed in detail what the principles of trademark law is. Not only here, if you look at it, the first trademark law in India, legislated federal law, was in the year 1940. But if you look at a couple of judgments, which we will be discussing in the next few slides, it is before the very first Indian Trademarks Act of 1940. But to go through that, read that the way the law has been analyzed based on the common law principles, shows this law has been in existence as we know it for more than 200 years. Satish?
And in fact, following this judgment, there was a very early 20th century judgment in Singer Manufacturing Company versus Loog, L-O-O-G. You can actually go to that judgment also, where in fact they frame questions. The answer to this question will be the issue in this case. So they actually framed beautiful questions as to how to determine the conduct of the defendant, whether it will affect the plaintiff, or is it just a question of the plaintiff? In trademark cases, though it is an infringement of the plaintiff's rights, it is not just his rights that are being upheld. It is the right of the consumer not to get confused. So in that sense, trademark law is more concerned not about the plaintiff per se, but about the person on the street, the customer, the person who buys the product. And that is what these judgments often repeat. Yeah.
And to recap who the person is, I just go back to the previous the webinar that we had. A person of ordinary, an ordinary person with average intelligence and imperfect recollection is the criteria, which has been followed ever since the beginning.
Till date. That is the law. Exactly.
So,
in fact, yeah.
No, yeah, go ahead, Satish. Complete it.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, sir.
No, I just wanted, I remember just coming to the session here. We'll start with discussing what a passing off is. I remember one of the cases, probably, I think 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I'm not sure. One of the, I appeared before, I don't want to name the judge, but one of the High Court judges here, who was not very well versed with the intellectual property. He's been always a civil or criminal practitioner, I'm not sure. So the one question he asked me when I kind of brought this infringement of trademark and passing up before him, the question, whenever I discuss this, that question he asked me is always, it's etched in my mind. He asked me, don't tell me, don't argue all these things. Just tell me in simple terms, what is the thin line of difference between infringement of a trademark and passing off? And he used the word thin line of difference, and for a moment I was dumbstruck because there is no thin line. and so there is a very thick line, and this is the line that is in front of you, Satish.
Divakar, you'd like to take it?
There is actually not a line. There is actually a field between the two. If I should actually be very precise about it. Yeah, as far as when it comes to difference between what an infringement and what a passing off is all about. See that the difference lies very clearly as to whether how it is approaching it is from the point of view of the customer. So basically, is a different selling goods that is when it approaches the customer when it approaches the customer, whether it is leading the customer to believe that he is purchasing someone else's goods. So that is the basis of passing off. That, as Mr. Satish had earlier when he was talking about it, he said one should not sell his goods as that of the other. So that is the basis of a passing off. On the other hand, an infringement is something that is attached with the registration of the mark. Therefore, the line of argument that has to be taken is very clear, whether it is a colorable imitation or not. Simple. There ends the issue. So that is what the Supreme Court in Russell Hornsby very clearly says. The difference is only that whether it is calculated to lead the purchaser to believe that he is buying into some other else's goods. That is the criteria for passing. As far as infringement is concerned, whether there is an imitation or not. That is the right and simple.
So is it fair to say a passing off deals with the market or how the consumers perceive? An infringement of a trademark deals with the similarity or otherwise of the trademark. Passing off deals with the goods using the trademark. Infringement deals with the mark per se.
Exactly. In
Is it
fact,
yes, Satish.
absolutely. In fact, in 1965 Supreme Court, they actually make that distinction in paragraph 28. AR 1965, Supreme Court 980, Navratna Pharmaceuticals.
Ramatha Pharmaceuticals.
Kaviraj Pandit versus Navratna Pharma is the judgment where they actually say, if you are filing a suit for infringement, what would be the issue? It's a civil suit. So what would be the issue? The issue is the defendant's trademark identical or deceptively similar to that of the plaintiff's registered trademark? End of the story.
Exactly.
If it is there is nothing else that needs to be proved or asked for to get a decree. Whereas passing off is a big turnout. It is completely different. Where I'll have to prove that what he is doing is going to affect my business, whether he intends it or otherwise, whether he wants to take away my customers or not. The fact is, will it affect or not? So to actually put it in a different language, infringement of trademark is more like a battle, whereas passing off is like a war. It's a completely different genus. And that is one reason why, when we are talking about passing off per se, there can be absolutely uncountable situations where passing off can arise, whereas infringement is simple and straightforward. You have a registration certificate, the defendant has a trademark. Are they similar? Are they identical? Over. So passing off is actually a more bigger and a more elaborate right. So therefore, there is a huge difference between infringement of trademark and that of passing off. And in fact, there are judgments which say passing off using a trademark is only one part of passing off.
Correct. And
Yes,
from a practitioner's point of view, it is always fascinating to argue on passing off than on trademark.
You don't have rules.
You don't have rules. Yeah.
It's common law.
It is common law, and you can keep developing it all the time.
And that is how it is evolved. But keep the basic principle has remained the same, like I said, since the
at least 1842.
At least 1842, and I'm sure you can find judgment even before that in England talking about passing off. But the concept of passing off is Satish. I think I'll take over the next one. In fact, when we are talking about passing off as such, or for example, for that matter, even infringement of trademarks, what we are looking at is how the marks are perceived in the market. The trademark itself, like we discussed last time, it's a mark used in the course of trade. So it is essentially the product of the market. So whether it is registered, whether it is unregistered, these are questions which are only of academic relevance for the consumer. For example, some of the world's best trademarks may be absolutely unregistered, or as a matter of fact, not registerable at all. In fact, I recall once Fair and Lovely of the fairness cream was refused registration at one point of time. Sure.
I don't know if they have later got registrations of the word mark, but it was refused registrations at one point of time. But even at that point of time, or for that matter, even today, if you take Fair and Lovely, it is a descriptive trademark like we discussed last time. But it does not matter to a consumer. As a consumer, I don't care whether a trademark is registered or not, whether it has been renewed or not. To me, all those things are of academic value. As a consumer, my simple point is whether I will get this product or not, whether this product is good or not. In that sense, when we keep that in mind, the law of trademarks has always put the buyer user much on a higher footing than even a registered proprietor. And in fact, you should read some of the judgments on this aspect, which are beautifully written as to how that logic of prior user is more important. There are scores of judgments in Indian law. Excuse me. Many from the Madras High Court also. In fact, this particular judgment, again, We go back to the 19th century, 1872. And please see the language used. And most of the trademark cases are, taken from the British law. So the language used in British law is amazing. Monstrous injustice, they say, would have been done if a man who has perhaps used for 40 years should lose it because someone else has registered it for just 4 years. So the law that is given here is that a prior user must be given a right even if it is against the registered proprietor of a trademark. And that is what happened in this judgment of a classic case with regard to passing off or infringement in NR Dongre, where the facts, if I can just take some 30 seconds, I'll just explain the facts. Whirlpool Corporation was manufacturing washing machines in the US. They were in India until the late 1970s.
70s.
When the government of the day said no foreign goods, so they went back. Until they came back in 1990, they did not have a market in India, but their products were known. This particular gentleman, very enterprising gentleman, I must say, just took the name and made identical products, washing machines itself, under the trademark Whirlpool. When Whirlpool Corporation of the USA came back to India in the 1990s, when the markets were liberalized once again, to their utter shock and surprise, they found trademark Whirlpool being registered by this gentleman. Though they had a registration earlier, they did not know the consequences or how the market will evolve. So they did not choose to renew their trademark. Their trademark had lapsed. Dongre had a registered trademark. Whirlpool did not have a registered trademark. So they were pitted against each other in the Delhi High Court in a suit for passing off. Throughout, Whirlpool succeeded. Single judge succeeded. Division bench succeeded beautifully. In fact, the division bench would have cast aspersions on Dongre, saying he is nothing more than a cheat. Then the Supreme Court kind of toned down the language to say that, all right, forget it, we will just explain the law. The law is that prior user is most important. And that too, even against a registered proprietor. And if you have time, please read this judgment. Probably every senior whom we today adore has appeared in this case. And the arguments that they had put forth was absolutely brilliant for both sides. But the law,
and this is one of the first cases, Satish, this is one of the cases where the transborder reputation has also been discussed in detail by the Supreme Court.
Yes, to an extent, yes.
To an extent, yes.
To an extent,
but
yes.
I just want to add that, because when you're talking about prior use and better than has a better right than a registered proprietor, just for, there are where it is first to register, not first to use. India is part of those countries where it is first to use, not first to register. It's already kept a pedestal registration, and therefore it is very essential, because there are countries where it is first to register. There are countries in the world where it is first to register. You will have to register it first to claim something, but predominantly it's first to use. And in India also, it is first to use and not first to register. Though registration gives you some added benefit, it is use which gives you the fundamentals, which gives you the base for protection.
I think most of the Commonwealth countries follow first to use principle.
Follow first to use, correct. But there are some countries in European Union that where they still follow the first to register.
In fact, just to give out another example, back in 1969, there was another case where transborder reputation was kind of upheld, where the mark involved was Caltex. That was way back in Caltex.
Exactly.
Sundar Permanent. So that's one of the earlier cases. I'm talking about 1969, that Bombay High Court had come across this particular principle to uphold in an opposition proceeding that came out. The followed was an opposition proceeding, but there also this transborder reputation was held in respect of completely different products. One was in respect of petroleum, the other was in respect of horological cloth.
Okay, classic Trinity.
So, Divakar, let us discuss about this particular aspect. When it comes to passing off, what is a passing off? I mean, we have given a distinction as far as the court is concerned and everything.
So what is the issue?
What is the issue in a passing off? Why do you
See,
need this classic Trinity test? Let me finish the question. Why do you need this classic Trinity test to establish or to succeed in an action against passing off?
The simple answer would be what we discussed in our previous lecture, section 31, which gives the prima facie validity of the registration. So when it comes to registration, you have a registration, you are immediately given a registration certificate, and the certificate is a prima facie evidence that this mark is registered in your name. Therefore, the first step is already crossed. So when it comes to, on the other hand, when it comes to a non-registered trademark, so the first step that you need to cover is that the mark has some kind of a goodwill, that a mark is used by you continuously, and because of that, there is a goodwill which is generated towards that mark. So that is the first step which you have to cross. And also, when compared with a registered trademark also says, I mean, the provisions of the Act also says that identical goods and identical marks are involved against each other. The confusion or the resultant confusion between the two in the eyes of the customer is also a given when it is an identical trademark. So that is the second step which also the statute answers for a registered proprietor. On the other hand, for a passing off of an unregistered trademark, that is the second step which needs to be crossed, that you need to prove that there is a possibility of confusion and a misrepresentation arising out of that. So those are the two steps which the statute clearly gives you in a registered trademark, but it is not there in the unregistered trademark. The third being the damage or the goodwill that you have shown to the court that you have earned. There is a possibility of it being damaged because of that. So this classic Trinity is very essential for a passing off action, because you need to prove that the mark has a goodwill. You need to prove that the misrepresentation has been done by the defendant. The misrepresentation, as Mr. Satish had previously said, it need not be even deliberate. You can pass off a goods without even knowing that you are actually misrepresenting it. You are actually doing something. You are not doing it deliberately. You don't have to do it deliberately. So those are the three tests which the courts have time and again come up with to decide in a passing off action. And one of the classic cases that has decided these three aspects in a passing off action is, as given 1985 Delhi High Court, BK Engineering. And incidentally, this is also a case where the trademark BK was used by the other person, the defendant, as to show as an acronym for his mother's name, Balwant Kaur. So section 35 of the present act is also has a connection towards this, where 35 says that in case you use your own personal name, you will not be infringing a third party's mark. But here, as far as passing off is concerned, that 35 exception is also not there. Even if it is your own name, if it is capable of misrepresentation, if it is capable of damaging the goodwill of a plaintiff, then your mark is liable to be stopped. You are liable to be, defendant is liable to be stopped for passing off. Is the long and short of this case.
To sum up, a passing off happens when a trader tries to sell or market his goods as and for that of a well-known or a celebrated a product having a celebrated mark. So when somebody tries to come as close as possible to something which the consumers are familiar with, when that happens, passing off happens. And to establish that, the plaintiff has to follow this classic Trinity test. First, to show that the plaintiff has actually a reputation. They have a goodwill in the market. Consumers respect that particular product with a certain degree of identification. That, and there is a misrepresentation by the defendant, which misrepresentation causes or hurts that goodwill or reputation of the plaintiff. And again, this is the sentence, a misrepresentation of the defendant may be intention. Intention does not matter. Whether he wants it or he does not want it, how the consumers perceive it. If there is a misrepresentation from the point of view of a consumer, then the action against passing off is established. Right? Satish?
In fact, if I remember correctly, in this judgment itself, Justice Awadh Bihari Rohtgi would have written, saying that the misrepresentation spoken of here is not that of the defendant, but of the defendant's trademark.
Correct.
So whether that is being used intentionally or whether with an intention to cause harm, that is how you look at it. Whether the defendants per se, as in the individual or the entity's intention is of no consequence. The misrepresentation is that of the trademark, not that of the individual defendant or others. That is the law laid down in BA Engineering. Again, one of the most beautifully written judgments. He has used phrases from foreign judgments to beautifully sum up the law up to 1985 perhaps, and said that this is how it continues. In fact, this judgment uses some of the old 19th century judgments also.
Correct. Perfect. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when it comes to passing off, the landmark case, that is the next one. I think Satish, do we want to cover this?
No issue. Go ahead.
No, I was going into the Cadilla one, but to cover the passing off. But yeah, why don't you complete this prior user?
No, that's fine. Cadilla comes a little later, so we can just run through this.
As far as prior user is concerned, these two cases, 65 and 78, they are what we call as not landmark, they are Bibles as far as passing off prior user test is concerned. So the long and short of both these cases is that irrespective of whether you have a registration or not, when the plaintiff can prove a user which is prior to yours, then that plaintiff will be protected. It means that the prior adoption and use of the mark trumps even a registration, which is now under the 99 Act. It is covered under a specific provision of law, which is at section 34, saving of vested rights. So what both, in fact, Consolidated Foods specifically says that reputation can be achieved irrespective of the length of such user or the extent of trade, which is very, very, very important, because you don't have to say that you have used it for donkey's years, like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. You don't have to prove that amount of use. Even a short use, but which use has garnered such a good reputation to you, is enough in case of a passing off. There is no cap as to how many number of years you should have used for you to claim passing off, is what is, the Bombay High Court has very beautifully explained in Consolidated Foods. And as far as Century Traders is concerned, Century Traders, it is, though it was decided in 1978, it is now a Bible as far as section 34 is concerned. What section 34 is now trying to say in Trademarks Act, that is saving of vested rights, is exactly what is covered under the Century Traders Act.
In fact, just to add on what you said, Divakar, as regards the length of user, I remember an English judgment called Mr. Chippy.
Yes.
In fact, what has happened in that case is they sell fish and chips in a cart. Now we have this Gulfi ice cream. It is something similar, perhaps. They just have a cart in which they sell fish and chips, and the defendant uses some trademark which is very similar within a period of 6 weeks. Just 6 weeks since the plaintiff started Mr. Chippy, the defendant comes out, matter goes to court and said the length of user is immaterial. So far you have bought fish and chips probably only from a store. Now this is unique, and this has therefore given such a reputation which deserves to be protected, and without that you would not have copied it. Therefore I'm going to induct.
Yes.
That is, the length of user is very beautiful. Rajesh sir, this is your territory, Allergan and the latest.
Literally.
Well, this is not my territory, but the later will be my territory. Where the Allergan was Milment, the Supreme Court considered use a prior use in world market when they have, before the date they have entered in India, upheld the right of a prior user in the world market to a subsequent user in India, which I think is the correct law. But 2018, the Supreme Court again went back and we changed, which we'll have a detailed discussion a little later. But as far as Allergan's Millman is concerned, Supreme Court very beautifully discussed what prior user is. I mean, the concept of a trademark, that the consumers are aware of a particular product. This particular product, or a subsequent entrant is using, trying to come as close as possible to a product which is very familiar to the consumers. But unfortunately, those people are not in India, are not in jurisdiction. That does not give a subsequent entrant to steal that reputation. So Allergan vs. Millman is a beautiful judgment which recognizes a first use in the international market to the subsequent use in the Indian market. And Manikchand played a pretty straightforward case. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we'll probably. In fact, this particular judgment of the Madras High Court, this was after trial in the suit, which is almost a rarity in perhaps in the 80s. But today with the commercial courts, trademark trials are happening quite a lot. In fact,
absolutely,
myself and Mr. Rajesh are appearing against each other in at least 4 cases as of now.
Minimum, yeah.
4 cases in trial. In trial, that is. So
actually, to that extent, the Commercial Courts Act has actually speeded up the trial process.
It has.
Which used to be a rarity. Because there was so much of pendency, and the courts found it difficult to complete the trial. But now this is really helping. But anyways,
there was one point of time. There was one point of time when Supreme Court was kicking back all the appeals, saying finish. That used to be one point of time when probably a period of 6 months or something. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, this judgment, it was just by Justice Maheshwaran, if my memory is right. Yes, Justice Maheshwaran, where after trial, the point of law considered here is something very normal, very common, very well settled now, if we can call it that. You will have to see the overall similarity between 2 packets. Please remember the 2 products involved here. ITEX was a Kajal, Kanmai. You remember you probably will understand the size of the packet. It is hardly 2.5 inches max. The defendant was also having a Kajal packet, another 2.5 inches perhaps. In these 2 products, the defendant had put forth in his defense 36 differences in the 2 packets, saying that there are 24 eyelashes, there are 22 eyelashes, the color of the pupil is different. I mean, I'm just saying those were not the exact, but he had actually given 36 differences in those small 2 packs. And the judge, in his judgment, actually records all those 36 differences and says, these are differences that the defendant will see, but not the public. The public will not take these 2 products, see whether this differences is there or not, and they will not decide the case that way. They will not choose what they want that way. To them, ITEX and IVIX are 2 trademarks which are phonetically similar. The products that are there are something which they are used to. So if you substitute one for another, it will still amount to passing off. And please remember that this was a case of trademark infringement and passing off. And the court, while deciding the issue, also discusses the difference between the 2. And in fact, Divakar, I think we forgot to mention here, there is one reference in this judgment which specifically says, in fact, the defendant had brought out some 3 or 4 witnesses to say that they did not find the product similar.
Yeah.
There was evidence to that effect. But the court rejected that evidence to say it is not for a witness to come to the court and say whether he is going to be confused or not. It is for the market to say whether they are going to be confused or not. And the judge will decide it from the view of the man on the market and not the man on the witness box. In fact, to that extent, it is a very beautifully written, a compendium of how trials in infringement or passing of cases is done. And that is the reason why we wanted to cite this judgment. Very beautiful judgment. In fact, if you see the judgment itself in the print, you will find a table in between. The table itself will run for 2 pages, and thereafter the discussion happens where they say all these things, and ultimately the suit is decreed in favor of the client.
Satish, let me add here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, Diwakar, one second. I just wanted to add.
No problem. Yeah.
Not just this. There are some gems out of Madras High Court. When you really want to understand whether it is trademarks or copyrights or patents, the gems have come out of Madras High Court. The judgments, gems have come out of. I mean, that I think I
all of us can actually.
Yeah,
maximum pride. Maximum pride that the way that our High Court has dealt with these cases, it's not as much as what Delhi or Bombay has, but the way these cases have been dealt with our High Court is something phenomenal. So in fact, if you can go and look at 1910, there will be a Madras High Court judgment, which we will refer in a couple of slides.
You're letting the cat out of the bag.
Yeah. But anyways.
In fact, so when just to follow what Mr. Satish was talking. So when the Madras High Court says that it is the judge who will consider the similarity between the marks from the perspective of a man in the market, Supreme Court has very jokingly says that the man in the market is not a Sherlock Holmes. Just wanted to include that because in 1972.
72 Parley.
72
Parley case.
Common man is not blessed with the observing powers of Sherlock
Holmes. So there again, it's the ordinary man with average intelligence and imperfect recollection who is constantly being pitted for comparison between the two parts. So, yeah.
In fact, the standard has been laid down in the country from a very early stage, which I think, though I have seen cases from, of course, English cases have gone a lot way ahead in discussing this, but I think the standard test, which has been laid down by the Indian courts from the early stages, has still been maintained. That's still the same. And I think probably we can be proud that ours is one of the few countries which have laid down the exact clear legal principles as far as deciding these cases. So we'll move on. Though there are too many industries, there are certain industries which often find place or often finds opportunities to approach court, and or let me put it this way: there are few industries which feeds on the trademark lawyers, and one major industry is the pharmaceutical industry, and most of the cases relate to all the pharmaceutical products or the FMCG products. And Cadilla, this 2001 Supreme Court case is the landmark which discusses threadbare the principles of passing out. Satish?
Yeah, in fact, like we discussed in the last session, this judgment was important to the Indian trademark law, not just for what it laid down. It also is important for the fact that it corrected an earlier decision and overruled SM Dicam. SM Dicam, AR 2000 Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court departed from the earlier
the settled principles of law. The
settled principles of law, and said, if a man is on a, in fact, the Supreme Court uses a beautiful phrase in that judgment. Say, moron in a hurry. If a moron in a hurry is misled, why should I bother? I mean, if he's misled, so be it. But principally, will you mislead? Will the deception be caused in words which are written differently? So in that sense, they completely, overruled whatever decisions that were laid down until that point of time. But within a year, when Cadilla came back, the judgment of the Supreme Court came out, they specifically overruled SM Dicom on the point where they say phonetical similarity is still important while deciding trademark cases. So in cases where pharmaceutical products are involved, this judgment is probably it leads out a lot of theories. It takes out judgments from very many different jurisdictions. In fact, they specifically dedicate paragraphs to say that this is the American law, this is the English law, and now we have culled out all this. What is the Indian law? And they then cull out the Indian law, they overrule SM Dicom, and finally give a judgment in Cadilla. So if you read this judgment, you will have a basic idea about how pharmaceutical cases in particular and passing off cases in general are decided in the Indian subcontinent. As you said, you want to say something.
No, I probably you also wanted to start with the marks and the rival marks in dispute here. That is interesting.
Yeah, it was falsi tab and falsi go.
And falsi cab.
See, phonetically the marks are falsi tab and falsi go. I leave it to the discretion of the viewer to say whether it is deceptively similar or not. In fact, the Supreme Court actually does not decide that.
Yes,
it does not actually say whether the marks are similar or not.
It goes back.
It simply says this is the law. You decide whichever way you want. In fact, Supreme Court does not give a finding whether falsi go and falsi tab are similar or not in this judgment.
Similar or not.
Correct.
That
is why the judgment is very interesting. And in fact, there are.
It's very important because this judgment is. That is why this is important, because the Supreme Court does not decide whether the plaintiff is right or the defendant is right. This is a judgment which says this is the law.
Exactly.
This is the principles of law which every court has to follow in future. And they stopped it there and they sent the matter back to the court for deciding the case matter. Continue, Satish.
And this is how they sum it up. This has been the principle in passing off probably since 1842 and maybe beyond. But they just sum it up. They sum it up beautifully in about 7 points. They say, please see the nature of the marks, the degree to which they are similar to each other, the nature of the goods on which those marks are used, the similarity of the performance of the goods, the class of purchaser, the mode of purchasing, and they also leave a room for extension at a later point of time, where in G, they say any other surrounding circumstance which may be relevant in the extent of dissimilarity between the competing marks. So they just throw it open in spite of presenting the 6 points which are probably followed by every court in every trademark case today. They also give a room for error and they say, if there is anything more, you can add. So it is like the current lockdown situation, where the central government lays down something and says, if the state government wants, they can lock down a few more. Something similar is what the.
And the beauty is the last one, the weightage to be given to each, depending upon the facts of case. There is one more.
Yeah, there is one more right.
Extension.
So if you actually look at this paragraph, and probably the first 6, the flags that the Supreme Court has laid down on the street of finding out similarities between the two trademarks. This is how trademark cases are decided in the country forever. And this is why this judgment, particularly of the Supreme Court, has become the if you are appearing for a defendant in a pharmaceutical case, I don't know. I mean, I have been on the wrong end.
I have a tough job.
I have been on the wrong end of the stick quite a few times. Every time, especially judges who are very familiar
the previous slide had, it's poison, not sweets. It
Exactly.
deals with public health. And if a consumer is going to be confused, because what one drug is, the other drug is not the same thing. Maybe the same, not be the same. If there is confusion amongst the consumer with regard to the drug, it is the health that is going to be affected, and therefore it is right. The Supreme Court is right in saying the principles of passing off is more stringent when it comes to pharmaceutical products.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. That's exactly what they say. It says public interest would support lesser degree of proof, showing confusing similarity in the case of medicinal products. Yeah. So
True.
we move on to.
So
this,
now
Divakar?
we discussed about passing off. Oh, sorry, you have this one. Live 52. Okay, continue.
Divakar?
No, I thought we are done with it. Divakar, I thought you were going to take this.
Yeah, actually, yes. See, it's what we call and what Mr. Satish had called, this is not a war, this is a battle. I mean, this is not a battle, this is a war. Live 52 was a war waged before the various courts.
Only two courts, Delhi and Supreme Court.
Yeah, and it had back and forth. It was a complete. You can actually simulate it with a family drama. So what happened was, as it first, an ex parte injunction was given for between the marks involved were Live 52 and Live T. Both were, as the marks themselves can, you can guess, it contains something to do with liver. Treatment of liver-related illness. So what Live 52 and Live T were the marks in the opposite end. And Hindustan had obtained an injunction against the other person, other defendant, ex parte was confirmed. And when it came to matter to be decided on, when the matter came before the division bench. So what the division bench said was, it gave out an anticlimactic holding, as in saying that Live in Live 52 and both Live 52 and Live T, Live is something to do with liver, therefore it is common to trade, therefore it cannot have any monopoly, and therefore there cannot be an injunction, is what the long and short of division bench's decision. And this decision was given in 1998. And up till the matter was decided on the trial, all of us in practice had a field day when it came to being a defendant in a pharmaceutical case. So when it comes to being a defendant in a pharmaceutical case, Himalaya versus SBL, Live 52 versus Live T was the sheet anchor of all the defendant case arguments, where it says that if the mark itself has a component which is common to trade or which is culled out from illness or the basic ingredient of the drug, then SBL versus Himalaya, Live 52 became a sheet anchor saying that there is no possibility of an injunction. But having said that, this same matter, when it went for trial and the court had refused to, the court had refused to go by whatever it had earlier said, Delhi High Court, the division bench judgment had said that no, Live 52 and Live T have to be considered as whole. When considered as whole, it cannot be dissected. Therefore, the overall similarity has to be considered, and considering overall similarity, the marks were held to be, the defendant's mark was held to be infringing, and therefore decree was granted. So this is why I called it to be a family drama, because all through the years since 1998 till 2013, when the division bench came out with the trial judgment, appeal over the trial judgment basically, it was a field day for all the defendants advocates for pharma matters, where we had Live 52, Live T as the sheet anchor. But now it cannot be used. It has been, it has become a landmark judgment as far as dissection of marks is concerned. So the division bench of Delhi High Court has said that it cannot be dissected. The marks have to be considered as a whole.
In fact, Justice Manmohan Singh, who wrote the 2013 division bench judgment, puts it all as in a single paragraph, where he heads it saying anti-dissection rule. And it he relies on various judgments and finally comes to the conclusion the marks are some.
Which I think is right.
Exactly.
So now from we discussed about passing off, which deals more with an unregistered trademark. Moving on to registered trademarks. Moving on to the remedy of injunction. The earliest that we could find, Satish, it was actually Satish who kind of brought this out. Satish, you take this, I'll take the next one.
Yeah. In fact, there is one passing of judgment of the year 1940 Supreme Privy Council, which was quite often relied upon, and while reading that judgment, I stumbled upon the judgment on which the Privy Council appeal was filed against. It was from Allahabad High Court. The Allahabad High Court, in fact, refers to this judgment of the Madras High Court of the year 1910. And this was an unreported judgment up until that point of time. So, in fact, in this judgment, the products were different. It was scissors, which was used for cigarettes, and the defendant was using it for BDs. The Madras High Court goes on a higher plane of passing off, as well as under infringement of trademark, to say that the goods being different is of really no consequence, because the products are something very, very close together. One is BDs, the other is cigarettes. So somebody who wants this product, when he sees this product, would obviously get confused. And again, the question is whether the purchaser, the consumer, is confused or not. It is the confusion test of the consumer that is again and again repeated in all these judgments. And in this judgment, they say the plaintiff had a right to restrain the defendant, and they in fact grant an injunction against the defendant selling BDs, though plaintiff did not sell BDs at all at that point of time, or even for that matter, even today, under the trademark scissors. And this probably is one of the earliest judgments which cut across classes, where you don't really have to confine an infringement case within class-wise jurisdiction. And this,
in fact, I would like to point out one specific passage which was given that judgment, where it says we have to further consider that the sale of Scissors brand cigarettes depend a great deal upon the reputation of that brand,
exactly,
and is likely to decline if that reputation is in any way affected. And it seems to me that the plaintiffs are justified in being apprehensive that if those BDs are widely sold under the Scissors brand and are in consequence believed to be manufactured, then it might affect the reputation of the
I think it is the penultimate paragraph of the judgment.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very beautifully written.
So I just want to add, this principle is what is found in section 29.4. We have not given you this a slide in 29.4, 29, 1, 2, 3, and 4 and all, because it was already covered. You will find the details of 29 in the previous session that we had. And therefore, we just wanted to save time, and we did not give you the details of the what section 29 talks about. But law of dilution for different goods is dealt with in under section 29.4. Whatever we discuss forms part of section 29.4 of the Trademarks Act that we currently use in existence.
Yes, sir.
And
so
so
you can take this.
This I found very interesting for 2-3 reasons. One, the facts, as you saw, the very first bullet point will give you the rival marks: elephant cigarettes and elephant chewing tobacco. But one interesting thing that always struck me was all the earlier cases in India, at least involving Madras High Court, will be cigarettes, chewing tobacco, snuff, paake. All these goods that, you think these traders, it's so fascinating for me that these traders are so well versed and they were so vigilant in protecting their brand.
Most of them were foreign brands.
Foreign brands. and they're fighting them here. So that was one interesting part of this particular case, that it's elephant cigarette was elephant chewing tobacco. There was one English judge and two Indian judges. The English judge was Justice King. He held that cigarettes and chewing tobacco can be covered, it's a cognate goods, and therefore injunction would lie. But again, let me repeat, there was no trademark law when this at this point of time, because we had our first trademark law in the year 1940, and therefore the common law principles of passing off was only considered, and they took the principles from English law, obviously. So the English judge went straight and applied the principles of common law and said, elephant cigarettes, elephant chewing tobacco, and they're all cognate goods, and therefore injunction will lie. The Indian judge, I think it's Justice Ismail, who said, no, sorry, they are not same. There is absolutely no possibility of any confusion amongst the consumers in this, and therefore he refused the injunction. And then the third judge came, which is Naimatullah, and this is what he held. It is not, he says, it is not impossible. There will be some ignorant people who will be mistaking the different goods with that of the plaintiff. But you exercise ordinary caution, and when you exercise ordinary caution, these two products are not likely to confuse the consumers, and therefore he also refused the injunction. So there was one English judge against two Indian judges, which is fascinating for me.
And just to recap, this I think probably is one of the earliest cases where this tussle was initiated. Whether discernible customer has to be considered, or whether the comparison should be made on the mindset of an ordinary man with average intelligence and imperfect calculation. This came up till Dickham in 2000.
No, in fact,
this came up till Dickham in 2000.
In fact, the test of average man itself was not there those days.
Yes. In fact, Amrit Dara in
the principle was there, the term was
that was only under the 1940 Act later.
Correct. So, Divakar, take this.
Yeah, see, as Mr. Rajesh said, earliest cases in India were mostly in respect of what Mr. Satish, when we had a discussion in respect of only those goods which are generally now banned, gutka, chewing gum, chewing tobacco, and now scissors for BDs and cigarettes. And this
people will kill you if you say cigarettes are banned.
No, not yet.
People will kill you if you say cigarettes are banned.
Not yet. No, of course. Though I might think otherwise, but still, anyway. So this case, which was decided in the year 2000, was in respect of gutka, the goods involved by the goods for which the defendant is using the mark were gutka, but the mark say was Johnnie Walker. So the goods involved were basically spirits and gutka. And there was also a case of trade dress infringement, where the labeling for gutka was very similar to the labeling that was there for Johnnie Walker bottle. And ultimately, the court decided that it is not only a case for infringement of a trademark per se, and it's also for a trade dress, and went on to decide the mark based on. So it is not only the trademark; it is also the attendant features that are there in the packaging, which are also considered in a case for pass. So that is a criteria that is also there.
Sorry, Divakar, you can take one more.
Yeah,
no, I just want to add, Divakar,
see the goods here.
No, I know.
See, this is, if you look at the trade dress, if you remember the first session, said even the packaging, anything under the sun could be a trademark, as long as people identify it with a particular good. And this is an example of that. Divakar.
See, yes, this case is what I should say is as one of the better judgments ever written by the courts. 2009, the trademarks per se were completely different assets. The packaging had huge dissimilarities. So if the court had to go by whatever the court in Supreme Court in Dickham had to say, they have to consider the dissimilarities more so than the similarities. But no, the court decided that when you're considering the overall similarity of the packaging, one was using State Express 555 being the prominent part of the mark. The other one was using a peacock. But the attendant features that are there in the packaging, they were similar. They were almost identical. And therefore, when the quote very simply put it this way, when it is kept on a shop front, a 555 branded cigarette with a particular trade dress packaging and a Peacock branded cigarette with a particular packaging, a person who is seeing from the from a considerable distance will not be in a position to identify between the two. So the trade dress and the packaging, which were almost identical, considering that they were capable of causing confusion, the court went on to say that yes, they are infringing, and therefore permanent injunction should be given for restraining the other person from using. So that was the
as for this is so far as 29.4 law of dilution. Just to sum up, if the goods are different but the trademark is identical or deceptively similar, injunction will lie, but you will have to establish reputation for your trademark in the jurisdiction to succeed in an action for infringement if the products are different. But now this is we move on to trade names, which is very fascinating because please look at this provision of law. A trade name, a trademark is infringed by a person if he uses that registered trademark as his trade name or part of his trade name and deals with identical, similar or identical goods. Identical goods, dealing with the same goods in which the trademark is registered. Using a trade name, injunction will lie, but the condition is the defendant should have used the registered trademark. Such registered trademark should be used as a trade name or part of the trade name and used for the same goods for which the plaintiff's trademark is registered. Divakar?
Yeah, so 29.5 is one species completely different from what the other part of the provisions under section 29 talks about, because 29.1, 2 and 4 are the provisions which talks about similarity of the marks and similarity of the goods, because there is the principle of deceptive similarity is followed in sections 21, 29, 1, 2 and 4. But when it comes to 29.5, the statute is very, very clear, where it seeks to draw a distinction when a mark is being used as part of the trade name or a business name or a corporate name for that matter. So what the statute says is that it gives two important factors which are mandatory. They are not mutually exclusive. They are not either or. They are mandatory. What the statute says is that, one, such registered trademark should be used. That is, if A has a registered trademark, the same registered trademark should be used by B as a part of a trade name or a corporate name. That is number one. Number two, it should be used in respect of identical goods in respect of the registered trademark, which is, if A has registered the goods in respect of A, B, and C, the other person should be using the identical mark in the, as part of a corporate name or a trade name in respect of identical goods. So here we have very limited number of cases which actually explain the entire scenario. But if I have to quote some cases, the first one which is which is there in the screen in India is Ellora versus Banarsidas, where the mark involved was Ellora, which was used by the plaintiff in respect of Crocs, and which was also used by the defendant as part of his business name, not as a trademark, because he has a trademark which is completely different. The defendant was using the mark Ellora as part of his business name in respect of timepieces. Now, at that point of time in 1980, this distinction under section 29.5 was not there. Therefore, the case was decided based on passing off. It was also decided on infringement, but not under 29.5 principle. So just to paraphrase that. So For in that case, what it was decided, it was decided that passing off is passing off. Be that be used in respect of a mark as part of the goods or services, or in respect of a business name, it amounts to passing off because the basic principle of probability of damage and common field of activity are there. Therefore, injunction should be granted. That was decided in 1980. But in fact, I have come across a case law of a UK House of Lords judgment of 1910, which also had a similar view, where the marks involved were Amata, Pritchard Constance. Mark involved was Amata, which was used by the plaintiff as a trademark, but by the defendant as the trade name, Amata Limited, which was used in respect of perfumery. Identical goods, identical marks being used. And the court there had dissected the prayer, because the prayer was for infringement of trade name and trademark. The court there had very beautifully dissected the prayer, saying, as far as trade name is concerned, yes, there is a possibility of confusion. I am granting injunction. But as far as trademark is concerned, since it was an unregistered trademark, there were other attendant features that are there in the label. I am not granting an injunction. So that was one of the earliest cases, 1910 I'm talking about, where the same principle was followed. And the next judgment, which actually comes after 99 Act, in respect of section 29(5) is Raymond versus Raymond, which is 2010. This case, as I said, there are two circumstances. I mean, there are two conditions which have to be satisfied under 29(5). One being that the mark should be identical. Second being the goods should be identical. Now, Raymond versus Raymond talks about the second condition. It talks about the situation where the marks were identical, but the goods were not. So the court said, what conditions for satisfaction under section 29(1), 2, and 4 are completely different from what is to be considered for 29(5). Therefore, even if the mark is well known, even if the mark has high reputation towards in respect of the entire country, though it can be covered under section 29(4), if it is used as a business name, it can only come under 29(5), and 29(4) will not be applicable. Therefore, when it comes to 29(5), if the mark is identical and the goods are identical alone, the protection will be granted. Since Raymond versus Raymond, the goods were not identical. One was using it in respect of textiles, the other was using it in respect of pharmaceuticals. 29(5) will not be applicable. Therefore, the injunction was refused in the case. That is one case in respect of 29(5). The other one being the next slide. The other one being the most latest judgment of Delhi High Court, single judge, 2018. The marks involved were Mankind, and the other side using Messykind as part of his corporate name. So the case was here. The second condition was fulfilled. Goods were identical, but the first condition was not, because Mankind Pharma had registered Mankind separately, but not Man and Kind separately. The underlying logic that was taken up by the Delhi High Court was that Mankind, when taken as a whole, is not identical to Messykind when taken as a whole. Therefore, marks are not identical, and injunction was refused. Where it says that unless it is shown that the use of the mark to which the objection is taken is used as a trademark, there is no ground for passing off also. Here the court says that 29(5), even though infringement is not there, it says passing off is also not there, because it is not used in respect of it is not used as a trademark on the goods. That was also a criteria which was taken up by the Delhi High Court. So these are the two cases where the conditions, when they were not fulfilled, 29(5), no injunction is granted. So 29(5), as far as use of the mark in respect of a business name, these two conditions have to be completely fulfilled. Either or is not.
But let me, Satish, for a moment, let me add, because we dealt with these particular things last year. I just wanted to share this with everyone, because a very interesting how our High Court kind of dealt with this. We went all the way up to the division bench. Single judge, we succeeded. We went to the division bench. Tirumala Milk sued. Tirumala Milk Private Limited sued our clients Thirumalai Vasa Milk Products Limited. Thirumalai Vasa used, the trademark was Srinivasa milk. The trademark that is available to the consumers was Srinivasa milk. The trade name was Thirumalai Vasa. And therefore, the suit was for both a trademark infringement of a registered trademark and passing off, etc., etc. We kind of used 29(5) as a defense, saying that Thirumalai Vasa was a trade name and Thirumala was a registered trademark. I am not using the registered trademark as part of my trade name. My trademark is different, and therefore no injunction or passing off will lie. Single judge agreed, accepted. But when we went to division bench, I would say beautiful arguments on both sides. We had Mr. P.S. Raman leading us, and Satish Parasan was for the interns. Went to the division bench, Justice M.M. Sundaresh was there, and eventually it was settled between the parties. But the argument was one of the best arguments in a long time. But M.M. Sundaresh was kind of trying to dissect Thirumalai Vasa, saying that, see, section 29(5) says the plaintiff's trademark, the registered trademark, should be used as a trade name or part of a trade name. So Thirumala forms part of Thirumalai Vasa, Thirumala I Vasa, and therefore 29(5) there is an injunction will lie. And P.S. Raman beautifully argued that you can't dissect. It has to be a whole thing. You can't dissect. And unfortunately, we couldn't get to a decision because the parties desired to settle, which is good for the parties, but there was no, we couldn't get a holding as far as 29(5) is concerned. Hope we'll get an opportunity later. Yeah,
in fact,
Satish,
the line of argument
now you
which was
come to
made,
your domain.
Yeah.
in fact, the line of argument that was made to differentiate between Thirumala and Thirumalai Vasa was that there was ideological change, that the meaning itself is completely different. When Thirumala is talking about a place, Thirumalai Vasa is talking about a person. It's referring to a person. Therefore, there is no possibility of it being dissected, because once dissected, the entire meaning changes. That was also an argument.
Yeah. Anyway, Satish, this is.
Now we move over to the other part. I mean, it is, though domain name disputes are essentially dealt with under the law of passing off even to date. But the judgment of the Supreme Court referred to in this slide, one of 2004, actually came from the Bangalore High Court, where the single judge, where the district court granted injunction. On appeal, the High Court vacated the injunction, against which an appeal was filed in the Supreme Court of India, where until that point of time, there was not a single judgment on the issue of whether domain names could be treated at par with a trademark. Can a domain name be a trademark at all? Can I even sue for passing off? But Justice Rumapal, who wrote the judgment, has so beautifully put it, saying, just like a trademark is a window to a normal world, a domain name is a window to the virtual world. So just like you are using a trademark in the physical market, the domain name is what you use as a trademark in the virtual market. Therefore, they are equal, and therefore even a domain name can be treated as a trademark. In fact, for the law of passing off to be argued, you don't really require it to be a trademark, as I said in the beginning, but to make it equal to a trademark, it means the protection is that much more better. In fact, one of the often things which I find in this judgment is that until then we had only the High Court judgments. There was not a single judgment of the Supreme Court which could be cited before the Supreme Court at that point of time. So every single judgment which was granted until the High Court was cited before.
Satish, your voice is breaking. Your voice is breaking. Hello? Satish?
I think there is a problem with his internet connection.
Satish is not audible.
Satish is not audible. Huh? Probably he's coming back. And then let me continue. See, domain name disputes, they're not too different from the regular one, but what the defendant here tried to say was, I mean, the distinction that the defendant tried to argue or the Supreme Court tried to address is this. A trademark is territorial in nature, like we said, intellectual property or trademarks is territorial in nature. You have a jurisdiction. But when it comes to a virtual world, it does not have a jurisdiction, right? And there is a difference. And the Supreme Court tried to address this distinction. A trademark, it is territorial, it is registered in one jurisdiction, it is not registered in another jurisdiction, and therefore it is easy to deal with it. But when it comes to a virtual world which is out there for in the entire world, how do you address it? And SIFI also said they try to bring in many other similar marks. For example, they try to bring in a SIFI, a sci-fi, saying that these are all available there, and therefore SIFI cannot try to claim a monopoly over that trademark. But the Supreme Court just rubbished all that, saying that even if any party who goes to a website and just by mistake types on extra F, it will take it to the defendant's site. And what site it is, it's good, bad, identical, whatever it is, it will dilute, and there is an infringement, and therefore there is an infringement of a trademark, and therefore there is a passing. So it's one of the landmark judgment as far as there is one of the landmark judgment as far as domain name disputes are concerned. Satish is just coming back. I think his internet was disconnected. You will get the slides in just a minute, but I'll continue with just discussing about domain name disputes. So if you look at several judgments, of course, 2004, this Supreme Court's decision is one of the landmark, and it deals with the entire spectrum of trademark law vis-a-vis the virtual world. And actually, it provides a base for all domain name disputes. So this is actually said. Divakar, do you have anything to add here?
Actually, Mr. Satish is back online. Yeah, he was discussing.
I'll have to just get the screen.
Yeah, Divakar, continue. I'm just telling you about the differences.
Please, no problem.
Yeah,
Divakar,
so
continue.
as Satish was saying, 2004 was the turning point year for domain disputes. But before that, there used to be a lot of cases which were dealing with domain disputes, as in there was a misspelling in the domain name. For example, Rediff having a problem with someone using Radiff for the domain name, and Dr. Reddy's lab had a problem with somebody trying to squat Dr. Reddy's lab as a domain name. So the main intention of most of the defendants seemed to be at that point of time was to address the issue of domain name squatting. So domain name squatting was a big trouble because Dr. Reddy's had an issue with that. The Tata companies had an issue with that. There was squatting left, right, and center in respect of all Tata formative marks. And similarly, Bisleri had an issue with that. These are the Naukari.com.
Satish, let us talk about one second. Let us talk about Arun Jaitley. Let's speed up. It's already 5. Satish, Arun Jaitley is an interesting judgment.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, Arun Jaitley's case was not just on a simple case of domain name issue or a trademark dispute. There's technically no trademark, but you could sue for passing off based on your personal domain names also, and the judgment also talks about personality rights as such, where it says that he is one of the well-known politicians, well-known lawyers of the Supreme Court in India, and therefore his personality right and domain name as a personal property is also protected. So to that extent, the law has moved on from just being a trademark domain into a personality domain also.
In fact, there, the net solutions, just go back to that one slide. I just want to add that. Network solutions, they only, or they're the ISPs,
Registrar.
right? They're the registrars. They were, the court ordered them to, ordered penalty, saying that you kind of sat through and allowed this to happen.
Yeah,
I think 1 lakh or something was it.
This was one of the cases where the Delhi High Court started granting punitive damages against defendants, which has later become norm across the country. And in fact, the Commercial Courts Act now specifically says that you shall grant punitive damages against defendants who are infringing. We'll move on to the
coming
next,
back to the personality. Coming back to the personality rights, I think in the previous session we had covered a few personalities whose rights are protected. Rajinikanth's rights are protected, like for example, Robert Downey Jr.'s rights are protected. So these are some things which have gone transcended from being a mere trademark passing off to a passing off of a brand, being Rajinikanth or Robert Downey Jr.
That's why I said passing off is a much bigger species. It does not conform to trademarks alone.
And so therefore it is fascinating.
Absolutely. And this
Let's move to AdWords, Satish. Yeah,
please. So the AdWords are the latest kind of disputes that have started to come, especially after these three, this particular case, in fact. The first one, the judgment of Justice Ram Subramanian was by the single judge, where he declined to grant injunction. Matter went up on appeal. In the appeal also, the division bench of the Madras High Court declined to grant injunction, though they say that prima facie case is there, balance of convenience is there, yet I will not grant injunction because there has been a huge time lapse now between what has happened then and what is happening now. Therefore, I am not inclined to grant injunction. Matter went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court granted a very thin injunction, I must say, where the dispute is this. In the internet world, there are something called AdWords. That is, if you go and type in Google certain words for you to search a particular website, those words are called keywords. Those keywords are being used by Google, and in fact, Google auctions those keywords, which they put in the category of AdWords. So if you get an auction or if you purchase those words, your website, which has the words which are similar to that, will pop up whenever those words are typed. I hope I've made myself clear. So these are search words which are generally used when keyed in. Google actually uses them to make money. And this is what is called an ad word, very simply put. And Bharat Matrimony was one of the key trademarks in this particular case, where they say that the word Bharat Matrimony cannot be an ad word given out by Google at all. And in fact, this particular AdWords, if you will go back to section 29, you will find that 29 also has some other provisions like 29.6, 29.8, where they say it cannot be used in advertising, it cannot be used in business papers, etc. Those are the things which are covered under these particular categories of AdWords. So the matter rested there with the Supreme Court, where they said the defendant websites shall not use the plaintiff's registered trademarks in their website. I'm not consciously going into it because it had been interpreted several times by several people in several different ways. But recently, the second set of these cases came about, where the very same plaintiff went against all people different kinds of people who were using Tamil matrimony or Telugu matrimony, etc. as keywords or AdWords. the single judge refused injunction by saying that if you are looking at simply as a trademark, then all the provisions of trademark law will apply to these registered trademarks also. And if I find them to be descriptive trademarks, I will not grant injunction. So if it is a descriptive trademark, you run the risk of not having an injunction in spite of your trademark being registered is what is clarified in these cases in spite of the provision being 29(6) and so on. So in fact, the single judge has refused injunction, and the OSA judgments are also out where the appeal have also been dismissed as against the judgments of the single judge. We are awaiting for the plaintiff to go to the Supreme Court, and probably we'll have round 2 from the Supreme Court. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We'll quickly.
Satish, Satish, we have another 10 minutes, so let's just quickly compare the next one.
So we'll take comparative advertising, which is again part of 29(8) of the Trademarks Act. Where, pardon, sir?
Correct. Go ahead.
Yeah, Divakar, please.
Yeah, so when it comes to comparative advertisement, it's the entire gamut of law as far as comparative advertisement has been beaten to death from, let us say, the as early as 90s from 90s onwards, the cases have started coming up. So the basic bottom line which the courts have come to place in respect of whether a given advertisement is mere comparative advertisement or a denigrating advertisement. So the spectrum is only these two. So the court, from its earliest point of time, courts have come to a particular conclusion that puffery is not a problem. If you want to say that I am the best, the courts say that is not a problem. But when you say that I am the other person is bad, then that will be the problem as far as comparative advertisement or disparaging advertisement is over. So these are
let me put it this way.
Yes.
Let me put it this way. I'll just make it quick here. I mean, more than the comparative advertisement, the legal principles would be better understood by using the word disparaging advertisements. Right? This is what the courts look at now. If you look at, traditionally, not only here, internationally, Pepsi and Coke have always been at loggerheads. Sorry? Yeah.
In fact, comparative advertising is permitted. Disparaging
advertisement
is not permitted.
It's not permitted. Yes. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yes. So disparaging advertisement is a word that we need to use here to understand the concept of what is permitted, what is not permitted. If you look at probably most of you who have watched Hollywood movies or even the cricket here, Pepsi and Coke have always been at loggerheads. If Pepsi comes up with an ad, Coke will come up with another ad comparing with. So the courts have just looked at one thing. Court says it is okay to say I am better. It is not okay to say that you are bad. That is as much as comparative advertisement. All the case laws that you have come up with. This is what the answer is. I am better is okay. You can compare yourself. But when you disparage, when you create disrepute to your competitor by way of an advertisement, then that gets into trouble. You will be injuncted. And all the cases that we have come up with had some form of disparagements, which the court has said, yes, you have to be stopped. Let's move on to...
it being the one in COVID situation. COVID special, yeah. Dettol versus Lifebuoy. During this COVID time, in April 2020, this was brought into
the judgment has been given now
before the Delhi High Court, and the Delhi High Court says it gave basically a 3-step test. There's a 3-step test is there in the slide. So these are the 3 steps which will be considered by the courts for coming to conclusion whether the advertisement is disparaging or mere comparative.
And Satish, let's skip criminal procedures because I think we'll just cover the last march of law in the last 2 cases. Because as far as criminal procedure is concerned, it is available. Probably we'll share the slides with you. It's actually self-explanatory. Let's not go deep into it now because we hardly have another 5 minutes. 124. Let's move on to the march of law. These two also is kind of Yeah, correct. Let's look at the protection of names for holy books. This is a march of law, which is completed with these three. The recent trends or what has happened, how courts have dealt with the infringement of trademark in the recent history, recent practice since 2015. Holy books, holy names, whether it could be used as a trademark or not. This slide talks about use of the name Ramayana as a trademark. IPAB say the Intellectual Property Appellate Board said so. It is very similar, and therefore the registration was refused. But Supreme Court went one step ahead and said, please avoid using these historical names, this epic names or holy names of the holy books, because these are common to the trade, and therefore these trademarks would not necessarily be registered anymore. And the next is one of the probably, I don't know if it is, I have a mixed feeling about this particular thing because it deals with the transborder reputation. If you remember, Satish spoke about
Millment of
the Whirlpool, where use outside of India was recognized in protecting that trademark. In a deviating from that position, Supreme Court in 2018 in Toyota was Prius Auto. I think most of us in this group would know Toyota Prius. The defendant here in 2001, Toyota Prius, actually, to give you a background, they have been using it since 1990s all over the world. In India, they came in 2009 or 8 or 9. Prius Auto Industries registered their trademark in 2001 for automobile accessories. And the trial court, they gave a beautiful reason why they used Prius. They said they got the word Prius from the Hindi terms Pehla Prayas, first attempt. First attempt, and therefore they got Prius. And which to me it's as absurd as it could get. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court judge, the division bench actually held, Delhi division bench actually held in favor of Prius and granted injunction, but Supreme Court kind of reversed it. Supreme Court went into the genre of, I would say genre because it does not usually happen. They went into the genre of territoriality. They said, transborder reputation is important, but that reputation should be available in the territory. That transborder reputation should be available in India prior to 2001. What struck me in this case was these two reasons. Supreme Court in one of the places says, Prius is, no doubt Prius is a well-known trademark outside of India even before 2001 when the defendant commenced use of the trademark. But their use in India is not that much to establish their reputation in India, and therefore they cannot get protection in India because they have not established it. One. Two, as far as the other thing that they have said was, of course, factually, probably they were right because Toyota Prius, the Supreme Court says there's a lot of delay in approaching the court seeking relief. Delay was also one of the major component in this decision. But when it comes to transborder reputation, because this is where I have a problem with well-known trademarks and transborder reputation. Transborder reputation means a reputation of a mark, reputation crossing borders, entering into the country without the goods being available here. But the Supreme Court here says it is one thing to have customers in India as opposed to customers, as opposed to having persons who are customers outside of India. So basically, they kind of went a couple of steps behind and saying that, transborder reputation is not available in India unless you have use in India, you are establishing use in India, which I think is kind of taking it back a couple of steps. But anyways, Toyota Prius lost, and Prius, in fact, the registration of the defendant is valid. Satish.
The other judgment, the recent judgment is that of Nandini, where there was an earlier judgment of the year 1995 where they say the entire class of goods, the registration of a product within a class does not entitle you to have registration across everything in that particular class. That judgment of the Supreme Court has been followed in Nandini, where the Karnataka Cooperative Milk Society, which was dealing only with milk and milk products, were not able to prevent somebody from using the trademark Nandini for restaurants. The matter again went right up to the Supreme Court, where they said no way, and they used two criterion for this. One, they said Nandini is not an invented word, so it is not that somebody is trying to copy only you. So that the distinction that they're making is that Nandini is not being an invented word. Therefore, you will not be able to take it to the level of preventing somebody across different classes also. So that seems to be the logic of the latest decision. In fact, if you see the judgment of Prius and this judgment, I have a feeling where the Supreme Court is trying to protect the bigger players, or protect the smaller players in the market also, in the sense that the field of trademarks are being widened today. Not just like a foreign company comes and says whether they have reputation or not, they just can stomp over an Indian manufacturer. That kind of things is not there, is what I get a feeling from these two judgments.
Quite right.
And
again,
so the question
let's move to whether trademarks could be arbitrated. Let's complete it with that.
Yeah, there is this judgment. In fact, this judgment was taken up to the Supreme Court also and confirmed by the Supreme Court, where they have relied on all the other cases also and said that the current position today is the registrability or the validity of the intellectual property cannot be questioned in an arbitration. But the rights flowing out of arbitration can definitely be questioned in an arbitration. But what are the rights flowing? I mean, is an infringement action is something that could be arbitrated at all? Is something which nobody has tried so far. And how we are going to wordplay with the judgment of Justice the Madras High Court and the Supreme Court on this is something that we need to see. So to sum it up, infringement is a very, very huge animal. It has got it is more like our Indian gods. It has 10 hands, 24 arms, and so on. It can kill you by any which means. You'll have to be very protected to stay clear of infringement. And this, we will conclude with these words, which are from the judgment which we had cited earlier of Elora, where they say many and insidious are the ways of infringement. Sometimes the falsehood is more subtle, the injury a little more indirect. So our job as lawyers is to place all those fancy facts, interesting incidents before the judge. But the judge will have to take a call and decide an issue based on the market, whether this has a probability of confusion. This is possible to confuse the customer, and a case will be made out either under infringement or under ASMAF. Ajay sir, we can conclude.
And I would like to, I would like to conclude by saying it pays to be a trademark lawyer, because there is no end to these verticals that we keep getting. And as we get into the virtual world, the world is open. So it's very essential that you are aware of all these verticals of infringement and passing off, and also be aware that it keeps widening. And thankfully, right or wrong, Supreme Court keeps coming up with this statement or judgments here and there, which kind of at times it restricts, at times it expands, and eventually it makes our job very interesting. So thank you all for the lovely opportunity. And I think with this we conclude the subject, the law of trademarks. Hopefully we'll meet you again with copyright sometime soon. Thank you so much. We'll be happy to take questions if any. We'll also share the slides with all of you. Suri, you can do that, or do you want me to send it to you?
Yeah, I'll share it. No problem.
Share him. Sorry, I think it's almost 2 hours, but there is no other way we could. This is the quickest we can do it, because there is the spectrum is so wide. It's not easy to complete each and every term in an hour or two.
Madhu.
There was one more excellent session by the trio. I suppose that it's really interesting, and the much of hard work had been there behind the scenes. So essentially, that too is a trademark, is a niche practice. So in fact, teaching the nuances of trademarks and all, I suppose that it's really a fantastic job. And within these 2 parts now have been completed. I would obviously, I would wait for part 3, part 4, and part 5 and all to come as So essentially,
in fact, you can go on and on.
Obviously, you have a lot more to cover also, no? So I think
it is.
Knowledge dissemination is very important, and it will obviously benefit, because Suri has a lot of persons, not people who have joined there. There's a lot of persons in this WhatsApp group. So the reach of this presentation will be more. In fact, it goes to the districts and all, it will be really useful. So essentially, it is not limited to the persons who are listening here. Go to the lot of lawyers. I am very, very sure about that. So thanks, in fact, on such a wonderful session. And I suppose that it should be disseminated. Suri, please ensure that it reaches lots and lots of lawyers. We benefit to them. All the very best, and waiting forward in future for more and more sessions like this from the trio.
Thank you, sir.
So sweet, Bal.
Thank you.
So sweet, Bal. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.